Ah, ah, there, that's my, it won't pick up clapping. Audacity has like updated or something, so now it's got this like auto noise removal, and it's like I'm trying to figure out if like this is the right mic by tapping on it, and I'm trying to like sync the audio by clapping, and it's like not picking up on anything. It's crazy. Okay. Hello, Happy New Year, and welcome back to my channel for my, yearly videos. That's really all I do now is I post my family celebrating Christmas, and I talk about what I read each year. One day I would really like to go back to posting more, but I didn't even do an announcement video. I'm a PhD student now, so I'm like, I'm doing a lot of school stuff. My life is very busy right now. So eventually I would like to go back to filming a little bit more, but it's not possible at the moment. But I do always love reflecting on the books that I read each year. I've now started a new goal of trying to read one more book each year, because last year I read 24 books in 2024. So this year my goal was to read 25 books in 2025, and next year will be 26 books, obviously. So I'm trying to start limiting how much I talk in these videos. Oh, it's time to be real. Is it? It's time to be real. I was real last time I did one of these videos too. But yeah, I need to start limiting myself because I have a lot of books to talk about. And I think once I hit like 30 books, I'm going to stop talking about like each individual book, which is a tragedy. But I think just if something was kind of just mid, I might not really talk about it that much. And I'll focus more on the things that I really liked or maybe really disliked and why. I'm going to try something a little different this year. I have a 3-minute timer set for myself. So each time I start talking about a book, I'm going to try to limit myself to only talk for 3 minutes. So my timer will be going off a lot throughout this video, and I will probably be getting annoyed. But that's okay. So as always, I have used Storygraph to track my reading stats and pages and books and genres and all that stuff. So I'm going to kind of organize the video through that lens. But as certain books kind of come up and I'm like, I remember something that I want to talk about, I will talk about hopefully each book that I read within the context. I cannot take that phrase seriously anymore. 2025. That's 2024, wasn't it? Anyway, I will be talking about the books within the context of the stats. So as I said, my reading goal this year was to read 25 books, and I did meet my reading goal. Just like last year, some of these are graphic novels and audiobooks, which helped me meet my reading goal. Like counting those things does really help. Yeah, I think I read 4 audiobooks. Wow. I read 4 audiobooks and 3 graphic novels. So it says I read 8,789 pages. Let's see like how that compares to previous years. I think it's less. Yeah, last year I read 9,000 pages and fewer audiobooks and graphic novels too. But then before that, like I've had like a real jump since I started counting audiobooks, because before that I was averaging like 6,000, 5,000 pages. But in 2024, I hit 9,000. So I went down a little bit, which makes sense. I was very busy this year. And it says my average time to finish a book was 2 months. That feels right. That honestly feels like longer than I would have expected. And I think that these stats are always like a little wonky because I read audiobooks like often over the course of, if I read 4 audiobooks this year, that means on average it took me 3 months to read each audiobook. But then at the end of the year, I read 3 graphic novels that I finished literally within a day. So I don't know how much I trust this stat, because I think like there are outliers swaying it and stuff, but 2 months sounds about right. I guess I feel like I normally take a month to finish a book, but then I do have like longer books that take me quite a while, or things that like right now I'm reading the 3rd Legendborn with Amber. And we're just reading like 5 chapters a week. So that is going to like really like slow down my reading pace, but it's just to make sure that we're like reading at a similar pace, even if one of us gets like more busy on a certain week or whatever. So stuff like that really like messes with my reading pace. I would say like 1 to 2 months is like pretty average for me. So that sounds about right. Let's see. Wow. I read a lot of emotional books this year. Again, like, is this normal for me? Is emotional normally like my highest? Okay, in 2024, it was also emotional. Not a lot of emotional books in 2023. Interesting. So I've gotten really into emotional reads over the past 2 years. Let's pick an emotional book to talk about. What a great way to start off the video. Let's talk about emotional stuff. I do believe. Okay, we're starting off with a 5-star read. I'm going to really try to scatter out my 5-star reads, but I did really, really love the book Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. It was one of my only, I had 3 5-star reads this year. I don't think I can talk about this in 3 minutes. Okay, here we go. So I listened to Radio Silence while I was on the treadmill at the gym. That's normally when I listen to my audiobooks. And this has been on my TBR for a long time. I love Alice Oseman, and when I was reading the Heartstopper series, I really liked the character of Aled. I don't know how to say his name with an American accent, but I just felt like I really connected to him and how like he just always felt like he didn't fit in, and it like kind of reminded me of me in high school. I guess everyone feels that way in high school, but it was like he was a relatable character. So I always wanted to read his book, but I can't lie, I read the synopsis on the back and I was like, this sounds really straight, and I like Alice Oseman's like queer stuff, so it never really like drew me in. I was definitely wrong. There are a lot of queer elements in this story, although the back of the book clearly talks about a boy and a girl like having a budding friendship. This is not really a spoiler. It's very obvious that they don't have romantic feelings for each other, which is something very important to me, and it really reminded me, like specifically I was reminded of a friend that I had in college, that, you know, we were a guy and a girl and we just like had no romantic feelings for each other, and it was just like really, really nice. And also like his personality just reminded me of this friend. It's from the perspective of Frances, I can't remember her last name, but a girl named Frances, and she really likes this podcast called Radio Silence. She does not know like who is behind this podcast. It's kind of like it's not like Night Vale, but it's like a story style podcast. One day, the creator of Radio Silence reaches out and tells her that she likes her fan art surrounding the podcast and wants to like officially hire her as an artist. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is like the biggest thing that's ever happened to me. One day she like at a party, I think, like drunkenly confesses, or maybe the creator, who is Aled, drunkenly confesses that he's the creator. I can't remember how they find out, but somehow they find out that he's the creator of Radio Silence and she's the one doing the art. And they're like, whoa, wait, we thought we were just internet friends, but now we're friends in real life. They connect in a way that they don't really connect with their other high school friends. And through the podcast, we start to learn a little bit more about Aled and like, yeah, that's really hard. What does he want to get out of the podcast? Like, what message is he trying to send? Why is he doing this? And there start to be a lot of, this is why it's listed under emotional. It starts to become very dark. As Frances gets to know Aled's family, she finds out that he has like basically a very narcissistic mom. His mom sucks. And we start to see like how that affects him and how his goals don't align with his mom's goals and how it's really impacting his mental health. You know, Frances wants to help him, but she's also kind of like keeping their friendship on the down low because she doesn't want to out that he's the creator of Radio Silence. There are just like all these different elements going on at once. I feel like Alice Oseman understands how the internet and fan culture work. I will say, as I was reading this, I had this sense that like no one at their high school is going to care about this weird little indie podcast. But then I remembered this is like pre-TikTok, when like only a handful of things were very popular on the internet. So I guess it makes sense for like them to like not want their high school friends to find out about this. I still feel like maybe that was a little bit exaggerated. Like, how much would they really care? Probably not that much. But I think that Aled also just has like some internal stuff going on that's making it seem bigger than it really is. So I really liked the internet stuff. I think that's something that's really easy to mess up in fiction, and Alice Oseman did a really good job with that. Again, I don't really want to like spoil anything about the queer representation, but there definitely is queer representation. I'll just say there are a lot of queer characters and like a good variety. We have like some asexuality, demisexuality mentions. We have some bisexuality. I'm telling you, one of these characters I really had canon as like kind of trans and hasn't figured it out yet. And it just like really reminded me of like a lot of the characters really reminded me of my friends that I had in high school and college, and I felt very connected to them, and I'm like crying at the gym. So I really, really liked it, and I gave it 5 stars. After emotional, it says I read a lot of reflective stuff. Let's pick a nice reflective read. Yeah, I'll talk about Sister Outsider. which I really read for the purpose of reflecting. I read Sister Outsider because I was very into Khadijah and Bo's videos, who, oh my goodness, they're off doing their own thing, and that's awesome for them, but boy, oh boy, do I miss their videos. Khadijah and Bo is like a video essayist, and they reference Audre Lorde in a lot of their videos, so I was like, let me check out one of her books, and I don't know, just like see what it's all about. Because I think that a lot of my foundational beliefs about like race and gender have been informed by their videos. And I'm like, let me see the source material, you know? I really, really enjoyed this. This is a collection of essays from Audre Lorde. It was a long time ago that I read this, so I just like pulled up a couple sections that I took pictures of that really stood out to me. The one that I really liked, because I'm a teacher, so there's this section that says, when a white kid says 2 + 2 = 4, you say right. In the same class, when a black kid stands up and says 2 + 2 = 4, you pat him on the back and you say, hey, that's wonderful, but what message are you really giving? And it made me think about, you know, how, like, what expectations do I have of different students based on their race and class and background, and how, like, am I treating all my students the same? I like to think that I am, but am I? And in what ways do my students actually have noteworthy differences, and how can I, like, it's complex as an educator to try to address the different struggles that your students are having without also having like treatment that is, you want treatment that is equitable, but not just fair. Right? The picture with the people standing on trying to see the baseball game. So that line really stood out to me. And then the other thing, oh man, because this was around shortly after Trump got inaugurated, and there's all this talk going on about like white women voting for Trump. So I took a picture of this section where she says, I cannot hide my anger to spare you guilt, nor hurt feelings, nor answering anger, for to do so insults and trivializes all of our efforts. Which, again, just really stood out to me because I think there's this, there was like a phrase that people were using at the time too. Tone policing. It's basically like she's talking about tone policing, but it's like the 80s. That was a really big discussion back then. And I think I'm very lucky that I was past that at that point. I didn't feel attacked when people, because it's like, okay, if something doesn't apply to you, then like, obviously we're talking about like the systems and white women as a whole, and what can I do to, like, how can I talk to the people who are like me and get them on my side, kind of thing. It's not like people are saying you voted for Trump. That's not what they're saying. Anyway, so it felt very fitting at the time. Yeah, like people would just get mad at, I want to say women of color, but I think I mostly mean Black women. People would get mad at Black women for pointing this out, and they'd be like, but you're being mean. And it's like, okay, but you're missing the point. There were just a couple of like, I just think it's really interesting how like these ideas that she's writing down decades ago are still applicable today. It's interesting, and it's also obviously very sad. But yeah, I think like the reason I wanted to read this is because I feel like I've been reading a lot of kind of like baby's first anti-racism books, and I want to get into something that's a little bit deeper, and I think that I was really able to reflect from this book. After reflective, I had adventurous. See, now it's like it started out like emotional, reflective, very serious, but I had adventurous stuff too. Okay, I have a lot of Rick Riordan to talk about, so let's go ahead and talk about Court of the Dead, the second book in the Nico D'Angelo kind of spin-off trilogy that he's doing with Marco Shiro. So in Court of the Dead, Nico and Will are just hanging out at Camp Half-Blood when they get an iris message from Nico's sister Hazel telling them that something is kind of amiss at the Roman camp, Camp Jupiter. So they head over there. I think they shadow travel over there. And basically it turns out that the kind of problem that's going on over there is that mythics have been turning up at Camp Jupiter. So in the world of Percy Jackson, we have mortals who have no relation to the world of the gods. We have demigods, of course. And then we have gods. And then we have monsters. But now there's nuance. What if the monsters want to redeem themselves? What if they want to, like, turn over a new leaf? These guys are mythics. And this is why we have Asterion the Minotaur here on the cover, here on these nice sprayed edges. At the beginning of each chapter, we have the Minotaur because he's kind of like the first guy we meet, and we're like, the Minotaur? Oh gosh, he's dangerous. But now he's not. Now he wants to be a good guy. And this causes a lot of uproar within the camp. A lot of the demigods like don't really trust him and these other mythics that start showing up. Hazel is trying to keep the peace. Well, Hazel and Frank are both trying to keep the peace, but they want to do it in kind of different ways. So it's just causing a lot of discord between people at the camp. I think it's a really interesting premise. I think I wanted to find some kind of metaphor in this, and I couldn't really tell how we're supposed to interpret the mythics. Like, what do they represent? Like, I think, especially with Marco Shiro on this team and with these books having overall queer themes, like, it felt a little bit like there was a queer theme. Like, no one deserves to be locked in a cage. People deserve to be who they want to be and call Asterion by his real name. And it felt like almost a metaphor for transness, but I personally was kind of interpreting it as a metaphor for, like, again, like, I'm getting so political in this video, but I was interpreting it as like a metaphor for, people who have had crappy beliefs in the past and want to better themselves, and like it's hard to trust them, and we're not sure if like they're like a wolf in sheep's clothing kind of thing. So I wasn't sure what to make with the metaphors going on in this book, or if there even were metaphors. But what I will say is that my notes, like the main thing I wrote down was, so like, why aren't we talking about the fact that Tyson was once treated as a monster and then everyone decided he was chill? Like, Tyson is literally mentioned in this book, and it's like, okay, we have a Cyclops, we have a Harpy, we have friends that are monsters, mythics, whatever, and it's like, there's literally a precedent for this. So I thought it was very strange that we're acting like this is a big deal when it's something that's happened at Camp Half-Blood and Camp Jupiter for years. Overall, I did enjoy this. There were some parts where I was very, very invested, actually. About in the middle, it's like I didn't want to stop reading. But my biggest critique of this book is that okay, spoilers for book 1 in this spinoff series. After we get Nico's cacodemons, Cocoa Puffs, they are physical manifestations of his emotions, which means that every time we talk about Nico's emotions, or a lot of people's emotions in this book, it's so obvious. It's like Nico felt like a chill go down his spine, and then he looked down and noticed anxiety was rubbing up against his leg. It's like we are very, very directly naming the emotions, which feels like a bummer, because in general, I think the themes in this book are like, it feels like we're trying to target maybe an older audience than Percy Jackson, but the way we're talking about emotions feels like we're dumbing it down. At the same time, I think it is like they're trying to encourage the audience to think about and reflect on these things. So maybe it does need to be that overt, but it wasn't my cup of tea. It made it feel a little bit too juvenile for me, and it's very rare that I say something is too juvenile for my tastes. But in general, I felt like this was stronger than The Sun and the Star. With The Sun and the Star, I think there were just moments where it suddenly felt a lot like fanfic, and I felt like you could easily tell the difference between Mark's and Rick's writing style. In this book, there were some, I still don't really love the portrayal of Dionysus. He feels out of character. But other than that, I think that Rick and Mark's writing styles flowed together very well. And I think this was an improvement on the first one for sure. And I liked it enough. I had a good time. I also read 6 dark books. What did I read that was dark? Yeah, okay. I'm going to give myself 5 minutes to talk about the Sarah J. Maas books that I read this year. So, okay. So a friend of mine is very into Sarah J. Maas. She is like Becca is to Rick Riordan as this friend is to Sarah J. Maas. So she's been reading the Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus books for me, and I was like, okay, I owe you one. I'm going to read A Court of Thorns and Roses. It's never been the type of book that sounds very appealing to me. I'm not a romance girly, and I like high fantasy, but I don't know, like, I think I've seen it compared to, like, Twilight, for example, which I did not really like. So I had a feeling that I wouldn't like it, and I tried to go in with an open mind. To be honest, I did not like the first book. So, A Court of Thorns and Roses, if you don't know, is apparently a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Our main character, Feyre, gets kind of kidnapped by a couple of fae guys, like fairies. And I really like that idea, by the way. The fae are very creepy. Like, what a great concept. Like, I love the idea of this like mystical fae world existing right next door, basically, like right in the woods near her house. I find stuff like that very fascinating. So the premise I do really, really like. However, it's a romantic. There are a lot of romance elements, and they didn't work for me. So there are kind of two guys pursuing Feyre, and neither of them seems to understand consent enough for my personal taste. Again, if that's what you want to read in a fantasy world, and there are people who like they can separate what they read from like their own ideas in reality. For me, it was not doing it for me when we're just kind of like yeah, making Feyre do stuff against her will. I did not find it attractive, so I didn't really like either of the romantic interests. And also, there's kind of our big bad Amarantha, and she makes Feyre go on all these trials, and she gives Feyre this riddle. And kind of throughout her trials, it's like, if at any point you can solve the riddle, I'll let you go. And I can't lie, I solved the riddle pretty easily, and that's very disappointing to me. Like, that's just like a nitpick, I guess, but it does bug me when a book has like a mystery or something and I solve it really quickly. I also thought the answer was kind of cheesy. But yeah, just one day at work, I was like, because I was like listening to the audiobook, so I never really got the chance to like set it down and think about the riddle. One day I was just walking the halls at the university where I worked, and I was like, let me think about this riddle. And I like solved it in like 5 minutes. I was like, I think the riddle could have been a little more challenging if it was going to be like such a big deal, you know? So I didn't really like the first one, but I said, but my friend is really into the series, so I'll probably continue. And then I read A Court of Mist and Fury, and I did start to like this one more. I kind of told my friends that I like it in the same way that I like Love is Blind or like a messy reality TV show. I guess this is a spoiler, but it's very it happens very early in this book. Feyre is betrothed to one of the guys, and literally, I believe at their wedding, the other guy from the love triangle like shows up and steals her away, and I'm like, okay, wait, this is messy. I'm like moving to the school, like I'm moving to a new town to get my PhD. I'm like driving, listening to the audiobook, and I'm like, wait, hold on, this is kind of fun. So I did have fun with A Court of Mist and Fury. I still don't really like our love interest very much. I don't even know how much I blame any of the characters. Like, I think our main character, did I accidentally turn off my timer? Okay, I have 20 seconds left. I think our main character is not intrinsically motivated enough. So she kind of needs the man to like help her see everything that she needs to see. And he needs her to tell her how strong she is. And he needs, oh, no, sorry. She needs him to tell her how strong she is. And she needs him to point out like everything good about her. And I just don't really like that. I wish that she had more of an internal sense of self. It's not necessarily a bad thing, and again, I can see how a lot of people would be really, really into this. It's just not the type of romance that I like to read, you know? Oh, and that's like exactly what I wrote in my notes. Ultimately realizing that this sort of romance isn't for me, but I can see how people would get into it. So yeah, I will keep reading these because I think it's important for me. My friend and I are both getting into writing, so I think it's really important for us to kind of see the authors that inspire us and what we're both kind of going for. I think I will try to enjoy it in the same way that I enjoy messy reality TV, although I don't connect to any of the characters, which is very important for me in a book. I think that's why I can't really like it, is I just feel distant from the characters. I can enjoy the plot. I can enjoy the world building. There are some things that I think are done really well. So I'm going to continue reading these. They're not my cup of tea, but I think I want to see what the hype is about. I read 5 books that were purportedly funny. Man, I really wanted to space out the Rick Riordan, but I do think that the funniest things on this list are unfortunately the first two Percy Jackson books. So I have to talk more about Rick Riordan. And I'll give myself a 5-minute timer for this one too, because I'm talking about 2 books. I feel like I don't even need 5 minutes, but watch me eat my words. So I've been rereading the Percy Jackson books as the TV show, the Disney Plus show, premiered. I didn't do this last year, so that's why I reread Lightning Thief this year, but I want to reread each book before the corresponding season comes out. Also, to practice my Spanish, something like Percy Jackson is a really good way to practice like colloquial Spanish, and it's not too hard of a read because it's aimed at like kids. So I've been rereading them in Spanish. In fact, I got this one from my friend Amber. It's El Mar de los Monstruos. And yeah, so in like June or something, I read El Ladrón del Rayo, The Lightning Thief, and I wrote that it was super fun to reread. Surprising amount of word-for-word references. So as I read them, I would have like the English version and the Spanish version, so that if I wasn't sure what something was in Spanish, I could just literally look at the same page in English. I just felt like that's a little more accurate than using Google Translate. So I was able to find some word-for-word references, and I'm like, if anyone says the show doesn't follow the books, they haven't reread the books in a while. Now that I'm watching season 2, I don't know if I stand by that. But they definitely like keep the spirit of the books. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. And I said I liked it way more than I was expecting, because when I first read The Lightning Thief, I kind of didn't want to like Percy Jackson. I had a lot of friends who were like, you got to read this, you got to read this. And I was like, no, I just didn't want to like read the popular thing. So I think the first couple books that I read, I was like, this is fine, whatever. But now that I like know the characters and everything, and I know what's coming, and I see the foreshadowing, Rick really did a good job of like laying the groundwork for a lot of things from book 1. Like I didn't realize he had so much planned out. He did a really good job. And Percy's so sassy from like page 1. It's just like, ugh. It's so funny. So I liked it a lot more on a reread. I took away 0.25 stars because Annabeth and Grover felt more like caricatures. Like I just felt like Annabeth is really, really mean, and Grover is clearly just comic relief. Like we didn't get to see a lot of depth from either of their characters yet. But again, like we will. But I didn't love that. Like sometimes it annoyed me when I was reading the first book to just kind of see these like very surface level versions of their characters. Yeah, dang it. And then I read El Mar de los Monstruos. I wrote Increíble, Perfecto. The siren scene left me gutted for days. Oh my gosh. Like rereading. Again, it's like when I first read this book, I wasn't a big Annabeth fan. Now she's literally my favorite character, tied with Leo. So I was like, give me Grover. I don't care about Annabeth. Like I was like very just like bored the first time I read this book. But that being said, there are a lot of moments in this book that were kind of when I realized that I loved the series. Cersei's Island and the fight with Polyphemus were just like, those really stood out to me. And I was like, okay, wait, I could really like this series. And now that I like all the characters and like know their full arcs and stuff and care about Annabeth, I really enjoyed this book that's like more focused on her and has the Cersei's Island scene and the Polyphemus scene. Like I could enjoy the action, I could enjoy the character work, I enjoyed like everything in this book. Yeah, even a little growth from Clarice, which again, like check out the TV show because the show took that and amplified it a lot. Yeah, and I love Tyson. I did not really like Tyson on a first read. I don't know, I just thought his like sort of childish voice was a bit much. Now I think I'm used to it. Like once you know the characters and go back and reread, it's hard not to love these characters. Yeah, I gave this 5 stars. I enjoyed it so much. And in my notes, I said that like I literally enjoyed it so much that I got scared that I wouldn't like season 2 of the show because it wouldn't live up to my expectations. And I do think it is making it harder for me to like the show. But you just got to recognize that it's like they're two separate. It's an adaptation. They're two separate things. They're both good in their own ways. But man, oh man, the book is just flawless. So yeah, those were my main moods for 2025. Emotional, reflective, adventurous, dark, and funny. So kind of all over the place. For pace, I read 68% medium paced, 28% fast paced. What was my slow paced book? Poppy War? Oh, the Adjunct Underclass. I didn't even take very many notes on the adjunct underclass. I don't have a lot to say about this book. This is basically a book kind of revealing the like seedy underbelly of academia and how adjunct teachers are kind of exploited and how TAs are exploited and how even like in a lecturer position, it's like you're not getting kind of what you're worth compared to, for example, like the sports faculty. How universities have kind of become like almost a pyramid scheme, and there are a few people at the top with a lot of money and then trying to hire a lot of instructors so they can pay them very little. And I mean, most of these were things that I already knew. So it was more, I guess, just kind of a cathartic. I thought it would be a cathartic read because I thought it would be interesting to be like, yeah, I lived that. I was an adjunct teacher for 2 years. Like I've been in this kind of situation, and it's nice to hear about other people who have gone through this. However, I was reading this as I was preparing to go back and study for my PhD. So it's a little bit cathartic, but it's also a little bit, is this the worst choice I've ever made in my entire life? Uh, it was fine because I knew like I'm passionate about what I'm doing and I wasn't really doubting myself, but it did become more of just a bummer. And yeah, it just wasn't like, it was mostly stuff that I already knew. So it wasn't like, I wasn't really, it didn't feel like a great use of my time because I wasn't learning a lot from it. I will say I listened to it on audiobook and I thought the narrator did a good job. Like he did a good job of, he had just a very pleasant and soothing voice. I keep talking about Night Vale, but I'll kind of reminded me of Cecil from Night Vale. It was like a little bit like advertisement. Hello, the dulcet tones of my blah, 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 blah. The audiobook narrator did a good job, but overall, yeah, it was just like, a little dry, and I wrote that like it wasn't as revelatory as I would have hoped. Like I didn't gain a lot of new information from it. And maybe while we're talking about pace, I will talk about one of my graphic novels that I read. Towards the end of 2025, I read 3 graphic novels to make sure I met my reading goal. And the first one that I read was Coming Back. Coming Back is about 2 women who live on this island in, I don't even think magic only exists on the island. I think they live on this island within a world where magic exists. But at least on this island, the types of magic that they practice are shifting and shaping. And I think normally you're born with one or the other, but we have a main character who doesn't really have mastery over either magic. So there are 2 main characters. There's our girl who doesn't have mastery over either magic, and our girl who is, I think, like one of the best. In fact, I think she might have mastery over both magics. She's very strong with the magical abilities, and they're good friends. And our character who does have mastery is really trying to help the, I want to say like muggle character understand and use the magic more. Something kind of weird happens with the magic, and our girl who doesn't have mastery over magic has to go off and leave the island and kind of figure out what's going on. While she's gone, our magical guru girl breaks a very important rule and is kicked out of the island. So now our 2 girls are both off the island for different reasons, and it's like, will they find each other? Will they come back to each other? Will our magical girl even be allowed to return to the island? And, you know, she's done this thing that she wasn't really supposed to do. So when they are reunited, like, will this girl forgive this girl? I cannot remember this girl's name. This girl's name is Preet. I don't remember her name. I feel like I'm struggling to explain it because I didn't follow the story very well. So although I enjoyed this, like it had very pretty art and there were certain themes that were explored surrounding the reason that Preet got kicked off the island. I think there were certain themes that were explored very well, but the overall like main plot I struggled to follow. The art was very pretty. It was an enjoyable, short, light read, but yeah, I think I needed like 50 more pages to help me understand like the magic system and the stakes and just kind of what was going on overall. For page number, I read 16% 500 plus, and then wow, a pretty even split between less than 300 and 300 to 499. Yeah, so I read a lot more short books this year. I think I know at least one book that's under 500 or under the 500 plus category is The Poppy War. Yeah, so let's talk about The Poppy Poppy War. The Poppy War has been on my TBR for a very long time. I honestly can't even remember like who first recommended it, but some booktuber that I watched strongly recommended it. And I'm not normally like a big like expansive fantasy kind of gal, but I do think that like I guess like Asian history sort of element did make it sound a little bit more interesting to me. And it's kind of funny now because R.F. Kuang is like having a moment right now with Babel and Catabasis, I think is how you say it. She's been on my TBR for a long time, but like now she's really, really getting popular. I enjoyed the Poppy War. I think I might enjoy Babel more, but I'm gonna finish this series first and then read Babel. This is a series about a girl she's like a high school aged girl from the southernmost district in this kind of fictional country that's clearly inspired by China. This district that she's from is like the poorest, least educated district in her country, but she is very smart and she knows this, so she wants to go to this big academy. Yes, Sinagard Academy. She has to do like very well on this test to get in. I can't remember. There might have been even some drama surrounding the test. But anyway, so she gets into this big academy and she's obviously very ostracized because most people at this academy are very wealthy and she does not fit in. I really enjoyed reading the academic part because I think that it's just a fun, satisfying read, especially when you're about to get back into school, about someone who like kind of got into this elite school against all odds. It's fun to read, even though she's like going through it. It is like inspiring. Yeah, this book's long. Dang it. I gotta go fast. That academia part is really just part one. And after that, spoiler alert, it's not even a spoiler, it's in the title. After part one, the country does start going into like a pretty large scale war. And at this point, Reen has been at the academy for a while and she has really upped her mastery of her magic. And we start to learn that there's maybe even something very special about her that makes her magic unlike anyone else's. So she becomes an important kind of weapon in this war. Although I didn't care all that much about the action scenes, Reen does join like a group of fighters that all have very interesting personalities and it's really fun to see them interact. So I think that in general, like with something like Lord of the Rings or with Mistborn, in these kind of like big war revolution stories, if I can get invested with the characters, I'm gonna enjoy it a lot more. And I think that I see the potential here. I can see myself enjoying the other two books in the series because I like the characters so much. That being said, I didn't really like the romantic interests. So there are two romantic interests in this book. One is kind of training her with her magic, and he is just really mean. I feel like he's supposed to be a romantic interest, but he is too mean. He's not appealing to me. And the other guy is a pretty boy who was racist and classist to her during her days at the academy, but when they come back together during the war, suddenly it's okay. And I feel like he did like kind of like a half apology, but I just didn't feel like it was enough. I feel like I need more from him in order to really like ship him with Reen. There was an attempt to do a sort of rivals thing, but he was just racist. So it was like, I don't know, I didn't think it was cute. So I'm gonna really need some convincing and maybe some more apologies from Nasia for the romantic interests. But the other characters I liked quite a lot. I think Reen is a very thought-provoking character. She makes decisions that I don't necessarily agree with, but like I can kind of understand where she's coming from. So she's really interesting in that way. And then I also just want to give a shout out to Kate, who again is like a male friend who is not romantic at all. And I'm just like, I love that. Fiction, nonfiction. I read 88% fiction and 12% nonfiction. Are there any other nonfictions that I haven't mentioned yet? I think there's one more. Ooh, ooh, The House of My Mother. The House of My Mother is a book by Sherry Frankie, who's the daughter of a Mormon family vlogger. And I listened to this on audiobook while I was at the gym, and it was very reminiscent of the time that I listened to I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy at the gym. Basically, throughout this book, Sherry is telling the story of growing up in this very, again, we have like a narcissistic parent who wants to create this picture perfect lifestyle to put on YouTube, but behind the scenes, things are, not as they seem. She has a pretty big family, especially her brother. Her brother is kind of seen as the problem child, and he gets some very, very inhumane punishments for his behaviors. And I think probably just has like, I don't know, undiagnosed ADHD or something, and like the parents are just like in denial, and they think that they can like discipline things out of him. So that kind of gives you the idea of like what this family is all about. And Sherry is the oldest daughter, so she's kind of expected to kind of keep everyone in line, and she basically does until she goes to college. And then once she's away from that house, she's like, she always knew how messed up it was. So when she gets to college, she kind of has a moment where she's like, holy cow, I need to like basically rescue my siblings, especially the youngest ones, from this like terrible household. It's not just her mom. Her dad is very, very passive and complicit and kind of tries to victimize himself in this situation. But it's like, dude, like this is your house too. And he didn't really stick up to her. So like the dad's complicit. Sherry gets this like therapist who ends up kind of like grooming her. There are just all these really, really bad adults in this story, and it's sad and intense. This is her writing debut. I think she's probably writing this at like age 20 or something, and she did a really good job. I don't know if anyone like helped, like if she had a ghostwriter or anything, but as far as I can tell, like she sounds like a 20-year-old, but she has like really, I think like there were some very powerfully worded sentences in there. I think Sherry did a fantastic job of capturing all these emotions that she really felt. Like she made me feel the tension when she does, like, spoiler alert, this is literally like in the news. But when she does try to go back and save her siblings, it's like you can feel the tension and the buildup. And I think she did a fantastic job. I really enjoyed it, and I hope she keeps writing. Okay, for genres, I unsurprisingly read young adult the most. What do I have under young adult? Anything that I haven't talked about yet? I will talk about Frontera. So another graphic novel that I read this year was Frontera. It's a graphic novel telling the story of our main character, Mateo, who grew up in the US, and I don't even think he knew, but he learns in high school that his parents are undocumented. I'm not sure if he's undocumented, but the family gets deported to Mexico, and our story centers around Mateo crossing the border to go back to the US and finish high school. I liked this story enough, but I think that I was talking to my friend Crystal about this. She didn't necessarily recommend this book to me, but she was talking about it, and I needed a graphic novel, and that was one that was at the library, so I was like, sure. But we were kind of saying that, like, we think that our main character is a little, he's like unrealistically impulsive and dumb. Like, I don't know a lot about crossing the border, but I know that you got to listen to your coyote. Like if that there's a guy that tells you what to do, you don't go against what he tells you to do. That's the first thing he does. Like literally, we're like 50 pages in, and he goes against the coyote's orders, and now he's in the desert alone, a 17-year-old kid in the desert alone. It's like, are you dumb? Like, I don't know, like, did your parents not tell you, like, stress the importance of this to you? Do you not realize how vast the desert is? Do you not realize how hot it's gonna get and how you're gonna get dehydrated? Like, I think he just, like, didn't I don't know, it feels unrealistic. Like, how do you not piece this together? So he ends up in the desert alone, and this ghost of someone who died in the Sonora Desert kind of helps guide him through the rest of his trip past, like, a jaguar and like helping him through dehydration. An indigenous woman also comes and saves him because he gets to like a water aid station, but the water has been like slashed by La Migra, and he like passes out, and he wakes up and he's been like rescued by this woman. There are just a lot of moments where I think it's not necessarily bad, but like it's almost unrealistic how he just kind of coasts along past all these terrible things that happen when you're trying to cross the Sonora Desert. I know that it's YA. I know that it's supposed to be like educational, but also not too scary because it's like, again, it's YA, but I just feel like the stakes could have been higher at a couple points or something, or I don't know. He was just the main character drove me crazy. I did like the Ghost guy's story. He had a really good story about kind of like his experience. I don't even think he really had a border crossing experience. He was working on a farm, but our main character, man, he drove me crazy. I read a lot of LGBTQIA plus. So I listened to the No Girlfriend Rule on audiobook. I listened to 5 audiobooks this year. And this is a story about a girl named Hollis who plays Dungeons and Dragons with a group of all guy friends. And I think over time she developed a relationship with one of the guys. So now she is kind of breaking the no girlfriend rule. Like within their little D&D group, none of the guys are allowed to bring their girlfriends. They have a no girlfriend rule. And these guys, they're just not great. Like they don't really let Hollis do her own thing with D&D, and they don't really care about the story of D&D. They just care about the action of their campaign. So Hollis finds a group of queer folk and women to play D&D with, and she starts to, you know, have her own little kind of queer awakening. And yeah, develops a relationship with one of the gals in the group, who, by the way, is delightfully charismatic. What a fun character. There are a lot of actually like the characters in this book. It's just a really nice like D&D group. Like we have like these girls that are all high school aged, and a lot of them are like queer in different ways, and they have different things happening in their home lives and stuff. And one of them has like a little 12-year-old sister. So one of the people on their campaign is, I believe, an elf played by literally a 12-year-old. So it's I think like very realistic. Like it reminds me of like when I was in high school playing like board games with my little brother. That kind of vibe. Overall, I liked it. I thought the romance was good. I thought honestly, it took me a while to get into the sections where we're like reading the D&D campaign and like keeping whose real life who the character is in real life versus who their D&D character is. But after a while, I actually got very invested in the D&D campaign, like the story within the story. I thought that was done very well, and there were really nice like references. It definitely felt like the author has played D&D. There was a Tasha's Hideous Laughter reference, which I appreciated, and a Dodie Clark mention. There were just a lot of really good like pop culture references that weren't cringy, in my opinion. And yeah, my only critique is I felt like there was a very binary interpretation that like boys play D&D for the action and girls play D&D for the character development. And I don't think that's true. I think there are lots of male-led or like heavily male campaigns that do get into character work and do get into the story. So I don't think that's necessarily true, and I'm sure there are lots of female D&D players who like the action. So I felt like that was a little oversimplistic. It would have been cool to see, like, I don't know, a gay dude in the queer D&D group to just challenge that notion. But overall, I liked it a lot. I thought that the characters were very fun. The plot was good. The story within the story was good. And yeah, just not only Hollis's kind of slow realization that she no longer has chemistry with her high school boyfriend, I thought that was done very well and felt very realistic, but also her development of feelings for one of the girls in the other D&D group was just fun. It was a very fluffy little romance, and I liked it a lot. I read 9 fantasy books. Anything I haven't talked about yet? Yeah, let's talk about Bloodmarked. Okay, I'll try not to spend too much time on Bloodmarked since this is the second book in a what do you call it when there are 4 books in a series? So this is the second Legendborn book, and there are obviously going to be spoilers for Legendborn, so timestamps. So in this book, Bree officially knows that she is the scion of Arthur, and she's having to deal with like a lot of the repercussions for that, like in terms of her magic and in terms of the racism that exists within the order, the Legendborn order, is that what it's called? So there's just a lot of that going on in this book. Another thing that kind of happens in this book is we really get to know the root crafters, just flesh that side of the story out a little bit more, which I really liked. The other thing that I remember noticing with this book is, once again, I'm so picky with romance. I don't really like the guys in this book. I just like, can I get something with good romance? So she's in a love triangle with Nick and Sel, and I was hoping that one of them would, I don't know, win me over in this book. Not so. I think it's actually a very interesting love triangle because there's also chemistry between Sel and Nick. But yeah, they just do this thing. So like I wrote in my notes because there was one moment that really just like kind of captured my problem with both of them. And I put, the love interests keep talking about Bree as if she isn't right there, and it ticks me off. There's a whole scene where they're talking about her in modern Welsh, which they both understand, but she doesn't. And she tells them to stop, and it isn't fair that they're talking about her like behind her back when she's right there. And they keep doing it. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just lost all interest in either of you. I don't know. I just think it's not, I don't feel like either of them really respects her as much as I want her to be respected. So I don't like our love interests. That being said, I just started Oathbound, and I am starting to like Nick a little bit more. I was very critical of Nick after Legendborn. He's growing on me a little bit. I don't want to spoil too much, but there are like whole sections, like I would say like basically most of the middle of this book, she's hanging out with like the root crafter community. So we're really getting to know more about like how the magic works for them and like what they're reclaiming and how they're reclaiming it. That's all I'll say. I got emotional though. It's very good. So yeah, once again, I'm excited to read the third one. I'm actually literally starting the third one right now. I still don't know how I feel about the love triangle, but other than that, it's a good time. Okay, I read 9 that's not true. I read 7 contemporary books. Let's go back to a queer book. I'm going to talk about Loveless. Okay, I listened to Loveless at the gym, and this is the story of a girl. I actually can't remember her name off the top of my head. She's in her first year of college. She's like transitioning from high school to college, and basically realizing that she's asexual, and I believe aromantic. She has 2 like best friends from high school that go to the same college with her, Pip and Jason. And people have kind of always like shipped her and Jason, like, you know, again, it's like guy girl friends, you guys must be dating. In college, she kind of, I think, almost tries to develop feelings for him, but it's not working. And she has this very like ace experience of like, why isn't this working? What's wrong with me? Like, just what's wrong with me? And like, those feelings definitely had me like, again, crying in the gym. Alice Oseman had me crying in the gym this year, for sure. So she kind of just goes through like pretty typical ace milestones, and that's kind of the plot of the book. Other than that, I guess the main plot is that they are all fans of Shakespeare, so they create a Shakespeare club at their college, and they want to put on a play at the end of the year. So that's kind of like the big thing that they're working towards. But really, it mostly is a coming of age sort of thing focused on our main character coming to terms with her lack of sexuality. I wrote that I really liked Jason. He felt very well written, and often male characters in queer stories sound so written by someone who's never been around men. This is actually how I felt about the no girlfriend rule. I felt like the boys in that story were just like, we're straight boys and we suck. Jason feels very fleshed out, and he's a good guy. And yeah, he sounds like a dude. He sounds like a dude. My only critique was that it read like a romance. And I have learned that, like, I think in YA you're literally required to have a romance element. So we have this side romance with our main character's friend Pip, having a crush on this new girl they meet, Rooney, and they have a very cute romance arc. But like towards the end, it's like our main character, gosh, I wish I remembered her name. Our main character realizes she's ace. It's like, great, the end. Nope, just kidding. We have like 5 more chapters for these 2 girls to get together. And it's like, I'm not mad that they got together. I enjoyed their romance. It's just that the pacing made Georgia feel like she was like playing like a background character in her own story. I read 6 romance books. If Loveless was listed under romance books, I would have been like, see? Let's talk about Aristotle and Dante. Another queer book I read this year was the second book after, so there's Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, and this is the second book, Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. Spoiler alert for this first book, Aristotle and Dante end up together. So in this book, they're kind of having to grapple with what it means to be queer and dating in high school in the 90s, keeping their relationship a secret, and like what friends do they come out to. There is actually a little bit of that, which is very wholesome. They're dealing with their senior year of high school, and, we want to go to college. Are we going to try to go to the same college? Like, I don't want to hold you back kind of thing. And they're dealing with family stuff, and I don't really want to spoil too much about what the family stuff is. There's one thing that really kind of came out of nowhere, in my opinion, that was very, very intense and great, but I don't want to spoil it for you guys. But the other thing is that we know from the first book that Ari has a brother that's in jail and is kind of ostracized from his family. So he kind of decides that he wants to reconnect with this brother. There's just a lot going on with, like exploring feelings and exploring family and relationships. Again, it's a series of vignettes, so there's not really like one like super great like plot summary for me to give you. There are kind of a lot of different things that happen, and it's really, really good. I think once again, like, I love the vignette structure, and he really like captures that feeling of high school very well. I feel very satisfied that I actually got that within 3 minutes. Yeah, again, just a great little like great snippets of this sort of experience. It's sad, it's happy, it's funny, it's everything. It's very good. How many stars did I give that one? 4.75. I was very picky this year. Like, if something wasn't living rent-free in my mind, I was not giving it 5 stars. Also under romance is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This has been out for a while, but I finally got around to reading it. In this book, we start out in the perspective of Monique, who is a journalist for like kind of a big magazine, but she's not like, it's a big magazine, but she doesn't have a very big role. So it's very strange when this Marilyn Monroe-esque Hollywood star reaches out to her and wants her, Monique, this like just kind of like underling for a big magazine, she asks her to write her biography. So Monique's like, what, literally, why me? I don't like, what's the connection here? And that's kind of a mystery that persists throughout the story. But she agrees to it, and the rest of the book progresses with Monique meeting with Evelyn, our Hollywood star, to talk about her life, and we'll kind of see snippets of their interviews, and then we'll see a chapter of the actual book. Again, we have a story within a story. We get to see kind of what Evelyn's life was like. She is famous for being an actress, but she is also famous for having been married to 7 different men. So we kind of get to know about each man and why they got married. Sometimes it was for love, sometimes it wasn't, and why they broke up, and some like secrets that Evelyn's hiding. And I don't want to spoil it too much, but yeah, there are definitely some pretty major underlying reasons for Evelyn going from man to man. That makes me sound like I'm like slut shaming her. Like, I'm not. Like, it's very complex, and it doesn't have to be complex. You can be with as many men as you want. I was really excited to read another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. I really liked Daisy Jones and the Six, and I didn't like this quite as much. I really enjoyed the documentary style of Daisy Jones and the Six, but once again, Taylor Jenkins Reid has done kind of like a twist on your classic approach to a book. We have these shifts from the interviews with Evelyn to the book chapters that like Monique is writing, and then back to the interview, and then back to a book chapter. So again, it's got this kind of meta thing going on that I really enjoyed. I love the overall like mystery of why was this just kind of small, new, budding journalist asked for such a big project. And the answer to that mystery was very satisfying, I will say. One concern that I had was I was afraid it would be overly romanticizing Hollywood and maybe like turning a blind eye to some of the bad things that happen and romanticizing like wealth, which I'm not a big fan of. I do think it glamorized Hollywood, but it was also realistic. I do think like it delved into like I feel like BoJack Horseman. I feel like you might like this. Like it kind of goes into the like again the seedy underbelly. And another thing I like is that Evelyn Hugo is Latina, but she basically like whitewashes herself to get by in Hollywood. And I mean, I don't like that, but I like the way she talks about that and how she felt like she had to do it out of necessity to do what she wanted to do and become a star. And she has a complex relationship with her Latinidad and with like speaking Spanish. And like eventually like there's a part where she like gets a maid and the maid tries to speak to her in Spanish and she feels like very uncomfortable about it. The way race and language are talked about in here I think are pretty good. It's definitely a more minor part of the book, but yeah, there were some parts about like bilingualism. That bilingualism stuff always gets to me, and I think that was done quite well. So there were like a lot of themes that I wasn't expecting, themes of queerness, themes of race, themes of like language and bilingualism were all touched on here. So yeah, I thought it was very good and honestly like realistic in those themes. Literary, I think I've already talked about all my literary fiction that I've read. I have not. I have so many books. Frick. Okay, under literary fiction, the first book that I read this year, so unfortunately I don't remember it as well as I would like, was They're There by Tommy Orange, which tells the story from like all these different perspectives of a bunch of different members of different Native communities and how their stories kind of coincide at the big Oakland powwow. Yeah, all connected to one another in ways they may not yet realize. I love stories like that where we're seeing all these different perspectives and we have that sort of dramatic irony where we're like, wait, I see how these two people's stories connect, but they haven't gotten there yet. It's very fun. And I also really like that we see 12 different people with 12 different experiences and 12 different, I don't think we see 12 different like Native communities, but we definitely see they're not all from the same community. So it really helps, you know, if this is not the kind of story that you've read a lot like me, it helps you to maybe not view nativeness as such a monolith like we may have been taught by the media. And yeah, basically I can't talk more about what happens at the big Oakland powwow, but something really crazy is going to go down. And we start to see about halfway through that one of our characters wants something crazy to go down. And we're kind of like, is this going to happen? Is someone going to be able to stop it? That's the gist of it. I don't really want to talk. I don't want to spoil more, but I really enjoyed this. I feel like I learned a lot, and although I don't remember the details, like the kind of overall ways that it challenged my notions about nativeness have stuck with me. Yeah, I wrote that the only reason that I docked 0.25 stars was I said I can't remember why I docked 0.25 stars. Maybe I started to lose interest toward the end because, again, what goes down is pretty intense and I start to zone out during scenes like that. So I think that's the only reason. But overall, it was a really nice like first read of the year and I enjoyed it. Also under literary fiction is The House on Mango Street, which I think was like on a reading list when I was like in 7th or 8th grade, but I didn't actually read it. I finally got the chance to read it. I mean, I guess I always had the chance to read it, but I had a really good excuse to read it because the class that I was kind of volunteering with had selected this book to read over the course of like a couple months. So I would just read a few vignettes a week and then come to class and talk about it. And I do think, you know, it's nice to do a reading group like that because you get to delve into the story a little bit more. And I think like spending that much time with the book was very nice. This is written in vignettes, which again makes it like very easy to read. And it's, yeah, just little bites of basically the life of this Latino girl growing up in Chicago in the 70s. And we kind of see like what's happening on her street. We see what's happening with these neighbors and what's happening in her house with her family and her friends at school, and just little snippets of her life as she I don't know what age she is, but I think she's about like 10 to maybe like 13 by the end. So like we see her kind of like starting to like watch some of the older girls grow up and start to wear makeup, and she has like she's like reflecting on femininity and what like kind of woman she wants to be. And it's just a nice like coming of age story. I really love the kind of like we talked about like people watching in class. I love the people watching element of it and just kind of like seeing all these different people. I love a big city and just how like the different people's like paths cross. And I think she really captured that well. I said that I love writing that has high impact with a few words because it is written as if like a child is writing this. So the sentences are not always complex. I don't think quotation marks are even used when people are speaking. So it's very simple and very straightforward, but like it's poetic and the words have a high impact without using like super flowery language. Okay, after this, I'll move on from genres, but I'll talk about my last graphic novel that I read this year. And this was another 5-star read for me. I really, really liked The Deep Dark. So The Deep Dark is about this high school girl named Mags, and she's just trying to live a normal life. She's taking care of her abuela who's sick. She's going to high school. She's working, but among all these things that she's trying to balance in her kind of normal life, she also has a deep, dark secret, which is in the basement of their house. They keep this animal, like mythical kind of dragon thing that she has to feed by it, like sucks the blood out of her hand, and it's like draining her life. It's not super lore heavy, like we don't really know why this dragon thing exists. It was just kind of she was born with it wrapped around her and now she has to feed it. It seems to run in the family. She has an uncle who dealt with this too, and there's like a lot of pressure from her family to not do what her uncle did, and just I think he released the dragon thing and ran off, or maybe he just ran off with the dragon thing. I can't remember, but they don't like the way he handled it. And so now Mags has like all this pressure to like do things the way her family wants her to do, until a childhood friend comes to town, and she kind of remembers that when they were friends, Mags had this weird secret, and she's like, did I imagine this? And they start to talk about it, and the friend wants to see if she can help Mags live with this monster dragon thing in a healthier way. It's all very clearly a metaphor for mental health, and I think it's really interesting. It is, it's a graphic novel, so it feels light and fun, but it also has some really dark themes. Oh, I didn't mention that this is by the same person who wrote The Girl from the Sea, which I loved last year and also think I gave it 5 stars. And he always has really good queer rep. So that was really nice too. Overall, I think it was just a really well-rounded read. I read it within one day, but again, it was just one of those like I couldn't stop thinking about. Like I would read a little bit and then I would go do dishes and then I would be like, I want to go back and read more. Like it, of course, it doesn't live rent-free in my mind the same way that like a big chapter book might, but like while I was reading it, I did not want to stop reading it. The art was really pretty. The story was complex and dark while still having funny moments. It was just really, really good. I would strongly recommend The Deep Dark. I wish I had more than 3 minutes to talk about it. Okay, let me also do classics because I did read a classic this year. A classic that I read this year with my kind of classics book club that I do with a couple friends of mine. We read Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. We started it in October and I didn't finish it until like literally December 30th. Oops. It tells a story from the perspective of 2 boys, Will and Jim. I think it's set in the 60s. It's set in the time period that it was written in. I think it's about the 60s. A carnival comes to their town, but there's something very off about this carnival. Like it runs throughout the night, and I think the first thing they notice that's weird is that they go one day and they meet a little girl who has the same name as one of their teachers from school. And it's like, wait, why are you like something weird is happening. And I don't think it's really a spoiler to say like early on they observe some of the they call them the freaks from the circus. What do you call like the cast of the circus using this carousel that runs backwards? I guess this would be backwards for a carousel. And as it's running backwards, they age in reverse. So they found some kind of like fountain of eternal youth through this carousel. So the whole book kind of deals with this theme of aging. Jim and Will are both about like preteen age, and there's kind of this like headbutting between them because Jim really wants to grow up. He wants to be a teenager. He wants to drive a car, and Will wants to stay a boy forever. He wants to be a kid. And then also, Will, his father had him when he was like quite old. His father's like 54, I believe. So his father's also grappling with like kind of the temptation of this carousel and turning the clock back and being like 30 again. So, you know, as I'm like entering my 30s, it was a very interesting theme, and also just not only from Will's father's perspective, but also from the kid's perspective, because I was always one of those kids who wanted to stay a kid forever. I did not see the hype about becoming an adult, so I really related to Will's perspective. Yeah, my only critique was I struggled to follow the action and like the lore of like when they kind of try to defeat the circus freaks. I didn't really understand like why what they did worked. Like the rationale was maybe a little bit like too metaphorical and hard for me to follow, but I did like the metaphors. Just maybe sometimes it was a little heavy-handed. Okay, this is fun. My most read authors were, well, I'm almost to the fun part. So my most read authors were Rick Riordan. I really went crazy with Rick Riordan this year because I read 2 Percy Jackson books in Spanish, and I read Court of the Dead. I read 2 Alice Oseman books. I listened to 2 Alice Oseman books, Loveless and Radio Silence, and I did read 2 Sarah J. Maas books as well. So those are my most read authors. And for languages, I was really hoping I would get to see this. I read 96% in English and 4% in Spanish. My 2 Interesting. Why is Mar de los Monstruos? I thought that math did not feel right. For some reason, El Ladrón del Rayo is listed as English. I need to like tell someone at Storygraph that that's not correct. So I read 8% Spanish books. Thank you very much. And I will probably read another Spanish book next year when I read Maldición del Titán. Is that how you say that? No sé. Okay, my number of books and pages. You can really tell that in December I was like, I have to meet my reading goal. Because I read 6 books in December, which is really like I finished a book that I had been reading for months, an audiobook that I had been reading for months, 3 graphic novels, and then I actually read 1 book in December. Everything else was like finishing things that I had already started. Other than that, it looks like August was also a good reading month for me. I read 3 books, but just the most pages in August, which makes sense. It was summer and I was like about to go back to school, so I guess I was really enjoying reading before I went back. My star ratings, like I was saying, I was kind of strict with star ratings this year. My 5-star reads were Radio Silence, Mar de los Monstruos, and Deep Dark, which I already talked about, like why I loved those so much. 4.75, I just had a lot of 4.75 star reads, I think because I also just had a lot going on this year, and it was hard for me to get so invested in a book that I felt like, yes, this is so good. It's a 5-star read, you know? So like there were a lot that were really, really good, but just maybe it was kind of like a my headspace thing. What else have I not talked about? Okay, one book that I gave 4.75 stars to that I haven't talked about yet is Iris Kelly Doesn't Date, which is the 3rd book in the Bright Falls series. Basically, this series follows Iris, our kind of 3rd friend from our Bright Falls group, Delilah, Astrid, and Iris, and Claire's there too. This book is centered around a fake dating trope. So Iris goes on an absolute disaster of a date with this girl, and then they kind of re-meet just by total chance. And the girl, her name's Stevie, like pulls Iris aside and she's like, I know we had like a really crappy date, but I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend because my ex is over there. And I like want to like not only make her jealous, but just show her that I'm fine and that I'm like doing doing fine on my own, because she has like kind of a complicated relationship with her ex in like very stereotypical lesbian fashion. Like they broke up and they're still friends. And I think her ex is just kind of dotes on her. So Stevie wants to show like, I can be independent. Look, I'm going out. I have a girlfriend. So it starts out as a fake dating trope, but then of course Iris and Stevie start to develop feelings for one another. And I honestly think it's done really well. Like I kind of expected the drama and the fake dating to feel too tropey, but I think it was like, honestly, maybe it's just because I understood her reasoning for it. Like, I don't know, just really wanting to show that she's independent. It felt like, okay, I get why you're like, I don't know, it just made sense. And I put in my notes, favorite of the Bright Falls books, question mark, definitely in competition with Astrid. Stevie is very awkward, and I found her relatable. Not awkward in like a cringy that happened way, but she is awkward in a relatable way. I didn't really relate to Iris, but I thought it was fun to read stuff from her POV. The only thing that I didn't really like is at this point I'm starting to see some pretty common trends with the Bright Falls books, and the one that really stood out to me is that no one in this friend group has a good family, which is like fine. And like I was talking to Amber about it, she's the one who recommended these books to me, and she's like, well, yeah, maybe the author has like a crappy family. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. It's fine to like have a thing and you want to write about that in your books. But it got a little boring to me, to read about a third main character with a family who just sucks. Like, family conflict doesn't always have to be the main thing. Maybe Iris could have had something else going on in her life that was presenting a challenge. But yeah, it's like I've already read about like Delilah and Astrid's crappy mom, so I guess I didn't really expect Iris to also have a kind of crappy mom. She's crappy in a different way though. But yeah, that I was feeling like, okay, I'm getting a little tired of this. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. And I think like if I had read it first, it might have even been a 5-star read for me. I liked it a lot. 4.5. At this point, I'm just making sure that I'm not forgetting anything. I have two 4.5 stars that I haven't talked about yet. So another book that I read with this class that I was volunteering with, they selected The Circuit. This was, again, one of the first books that I read this year, so I don't remember it super well, but it tells the story of the child of undocumented immigrants and kind of their experience as migrant farm workers. And I was going to say, well, he's not a migrant farm worker because he's a kid, but he is. Like very early on, he starts also working on the farm. His parents are like, no, go to school. And he's like, he wants to help. He wants to help the family make money. It goes into that. It goes into obviously issues of like race and language. And I mean, really, it's not so much like super deep on issues of like race and language in class. It's more just like this person, I think this is autobiographical. I think this person is really just writing about like, this is what my experience was like as a kid. And it's very like face value, and it's not like super analyzing it. It's just saying like, and this is what happened. And I think it was good. It was well written, but I wrote in my notes, it's a bit boring and tedious because it's describing the boredom and tedium of their life. Haha. So yeah, I mean, I liked it, and I think it did what it needed to do, and it showed me like, okay, this is like what this experience might be like. I'm glad it was only 146 pages because I think otherwise I would have gotten bored. But it's good. It was good. Another 4.5-star read that I think was, I'm being a little bit harsh with 4.5 stars, was Sunrise on the Reaping. I really liked Sunrise on the Reaping. Literally, like, my notes say, great book, OMG. I laughed. I cried. You can tell Suzanne Collins had so much fun writing Haymitch, and all the other characters are so lovable. Oh my goodness. Child Haymitch. So basically, Sunrise on the Reaping is a Hunger Games book that tells the story of Haymitch Abernathy's Hunger Games. And gosh, he's just such a snarky little dude. He's like annoying in a lovable way, you know? And he is also like very unconfident, and I mean, that's how a lot of the Hunger Games, especially like when we're from the perspective of someone in District 12, maybe after reading Snow's perspective or something, because Snow's very calculating, it was refreshing to read Haymitch, who feels completely unconfident. He doesn't feel like he can do it. He feels like he's flying by the seat of his pants. It's very entertaining, and you feel like you don't know what's going to happen next. A lot of these books where we're like
taking the Hunger Games, and now we're in Snow's perspective, and now we're in Haymitch's perspective, I feel a little bit like, was it really necessary to give us that? And I mean, like, maybe it wasn't necessary, but that doesn't mean that it's not good, and it's good, it's fun, it's adding to the universe. I think it did, oh no, what it needed to do. I took 0.5 stars off, which I think is too harsh. I think I should have just taken 0.25 stars off because there were too many references to like the Hunger Games, and I found that distracting. Like, I just wanted to learn Haymitch's story in its own right. I didn't want to like keep thinking about how it relates to Katniss. I think a few of those would have been fine, but it felt, at a couple points it just felt overdone. Almost a little like fanficky, like, oh, see what I'm doing? See? Oh, you have to know all the things and see, like, I don't know. It was just, it was a little too much for me, and I wish that I could have just enjoyed Haymitch's story and then kind of pieced things together myself, whereas it felt like Suzanne was trying to help us piece things together a little too much. Removing 0.5 stars was a bit of an overreaction, but 4.75. 4.75 for that book, I would say. Okay, another book that I listened to while at the gym was Forgive Me, Leonard Peacock, and that was very hard to listen to at the gym because, this is not a spoiler, it tells the story of a high school boy who has like a Nazi gun and wants to go to his high school and shoot it up and then kill himself. So sometimes I would be like, I really wanted to make sure my headphones were plugged in because it's like, I'm not listening to this because I want to do this. I liked it enough. I'll say the positive things. I think that the author did a really good job of having this narrative voice of a teenager who's insecure, and it manifests in a kind of holier than thou attitude. Yeah, he just had like very specific ways of doing things, and he clearly felt very strongly about like, this is the right way to live and everyone else is wrong, and it's clear that it was because he didn't feel accepted, and he was kind of like lashing out and exaggerating his beliefs and like amplifying them because he didn't feel understood. I really feel like I've known people like that, and it felt very realistic. However, I think that, yeah, our main character, Leonard, had some worldviews that were hard to listen to, mostly views related to homophobia that were questioned at the end. He had his values questioned, but I just don't think it was done to the extent that I would have liked to see. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's realistic. It seems to be telling, a realistic story of something like this really could happen in a high school in America, unfortunately. But yeah, I listened to this a long time ago. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that his worldviews didn't get completely unpacked. I don't think everything has to have like the most satisfying arc, but I guess maybe it's just a more sensitive topic, so therefore I wish we had fleshed it out a little bit more. But yeah, I would have liked to see a little bit more. I would have liked to see a little bit more flesh. No. I would have liked to see it be fleshed out more. Alright, and that's everything I read in 2025, and I've only been talking for 2.5 hours. Awesome. I hope this video is not insanely long. Maybe next year I actually will just not talk about every single book I've read, which is tragic. But yeah, like now that I think about it, I'm like, some of these I tried to take notes immediately so that I wouldn't forget about them, but even still, I'm like thinking back on them and I just don't remember or have that much to say. So maybe I'm starting to get to that point where I've read so many things that I can't remember like everything that I want to say about each one. So maybe it'll be good to not talk about each book next year. Let me know what you guys want. Maybe people like those really long, just play it in the background while Becca talks about what she read for like 2 hours, because I can do that if you want. So yeah, I think this was a pretty good reading year. Not like, last year was really good. I feel like I had so many 5-star reads last year. This year was like, I read a lot of like great books and a few fantastic books, you know? One thing I'm observing about this past reading year is that I didn't read very much nonfiction, and I would like to remedy that next year. I think I would like to read a little bit more nonfiction. I think with transitioning from work to school this year, I was really looking for an escape, and I got that and I enjoyed it. But now that I'm maybe feeling more comfortable in my new home, I can feel relaxed enough to not need that escape and read some nonfiction. Yeah, I do have a lot of books planned out for like buddy reading with Amber, and just things that I want to read. Like I didn't read really a Greek mythology retelling last year. I really would like to do that this year. So I have kind of a plan for next year. So hopefully I'll get some really good reads in. And yeah, thank you for listening to my ramblings about everything I read in 2025. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe. I currently, by the way, am sitting at 1,000 subscribers, so thank you for 1,000 subscribers. I think it's very likely that that will fluctuate, and I'll go back down to like 998, and then I'll go up to 1,001. So I'm probably jinxing it by talking about it. But thank you for 1,000 subscribers, even if it's short-lived. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe so I can stay at 1,000 subscribers. Just kidding, it really doesn't matter. But yeah, it is a cool milestone that back when I used to make videos more often, I did dream of hitting 1,000 subscribers, so it's cool to be there. And let me know what your favorite reads of 2025 were in the comments below. I love talking about books, clearly, so I'm happy to continue the conversation in the comments. Other than that, you know, I might try to post some videos in the middle of the year, but if not, I'll see you guys next year when I'm talking about my reads of 2026. Thanks so much for watching. See ya.